Joining me today is a guerrilla journalist, the head of Project Veritas, and the author of American Pravda, James O'Keefe. Welcome to the Rubin Report.
Great to be here.
Long overdue, I think, is the way I'm going to start this one, because you are sort of right in the center of a lot of the things that I'm constantly talking about, so it's good to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so before we get into all your work that I think most of my audience knows at least a portion of, I don't think anyone knows that much about you. What do we need to know about James O'Keefe, the man? How did he become this rogue reporter and guy that was unearthing all of the evil things that our tech overlords are doing to us?
Well, I started in college doing these undercover tapes. I actually started 15 years ago. I started a newspaper in college called The Centurion, and I quickly learned that the way to expose these institutions is to sort of make them live up to their own principles, like the Alinsky tactic. I had read Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky in college, and I decided to expose hypocrisy by making them live up to their own rules, and I realized that those rules were race and sex and sort of abortion, these sort of sacred cow institutions, Planned Parenthood and Acorn, and I decided to use hidden cameras. I went into the dining hall at Rutgers on St. Patrick's Day, and I said that Lucky Charms offends my Irish heritage. They took me seriously and told us they would remove Lucky Charms cereal. It was the first video that I did. And from there, I actually went on to work with Lila Rose, who you had on the show recently, and did some Planned Parenthood investigations, Acorn with Andrew Breitbart. And I have done some 200 undercover investigations in the last 10 years.
I assume as you do more undercover things, and now you've got other people that are doing a portion of them, it gets harder and harder to do as people know who you are and know the organization and things like that.
You'd be surprised. I mean, the moment we rid society of waste, fraud, and abuse, I suppose we'll win the day, but people are always going to be, I mean, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and money and things develop, people are always going to be corrupt. So I don't actually wear the camera these days very often. I sort of go out into the field to be a leader to the troops, but for the most part, we've got dozens of these people across the United States wearing these little cameras. You can put them in a cup, you can put them in a book, you can put them in a watch. And as long as you're...
Should I ask you if there's more than 4 cameras in this studio right now? Because I got 4.
There's a few over there, yes.
Yeah.
But you can, but as long as there's one party consenting to the conversation, as long as that you're talking to someone, there's no expectation of privacy, we would argue. And we won in federal court in Massachusetts a few months ago. We changed the law. So we believe that secretly recording someone is a fundamental human right. It's a constitutional right, because I have no duty to keep confidential what you tell me. So the hidden camera is an extension of the reporter notebook. And the cameras capture things that words don't. I mean, cameras capture intonation, inflection, and so we believe that this is a kind of transparency revolution, and there's a movement of people doing this.
In a weird way, is it a sort of depressing reality? Like when I've watched some of your videos, and you get engineers at these companies, and we're gonna talk about all of them, to admit things that we all are sort of thinking are true related to shadow banning or deboosting or everything else. There's a piece of me, even when they're tipping off the information that I suspect is true, there's a piece of me that's like, there's something sort of depressing about this, that this is what we've been left with. Like, we have to go after, mid-level and sometimes low-level engineers, and sometimes the bigger ones, but because there's no transparency when it comes to these companies. So it feels almost depressing to me. Does that make sense?
Well,
to
I think the way that I would put it...
Like, it's unfortunate, I suppose.
Some people call it depressing. Some people say we confirm suspicions. I would say that what we do is summon righteous indignation at the tragedies in society, including in these organizations, because they run so counter to what we're spoon-fed, the narratives that we're spoon-fed by the media, by the powers that be. So hidden camera journal, investigative reporting, whether it's hidden camera or print, does that. It summons what Ida Tarbell termed as righteous indignation at the tragedies, and it kind of, most people, I would say 80%, there's a sort of consensus around what we do. People say, well, that's wrong, or they deny it. So the Twitter lobbyist in Congress, under oath, said we do not shadow ban. When his engineer clearly said, what we do is shadow ban. And I don't know if we do that anymore. That's what the engineer said. Clearly meaning that he had shadow banned people. So It's perjury to lie under oath, and you know, these hidden camera videos really show people what's going on. It angers people. I think the world is more polarized than it was 10 years ago, so maybe that 80% consensus is going down.
Yeah. Are you worried at all, though, that we'll always be videotaping each other and that there will be nothing that's private? I mean, even now, if I go out to dinner, like, I'm aware that I'm some level of a public person, and sometimes people recognize me, and sometimes I was at the airport and it was very obvious to me that the guy, I was sitting with somebody, but that the guy next to me clearly knew who I was, and he was on his computer, and the whole time I kept thinking, this guy could be recording me, you know, and just all, like, just this endless Big Brother thing, even if the intentions of what you're doing I do believe to be good. Are you just worried about just that general state of we're all going to be recording each other all the time, there will be nothing private?
I'm not worried at all. I mean, there's an element of risk every time you interact with strangers and you talk to them. As long as there's one party present to the conversation, we would argue that it's ethical. And again, we think that cameras, visuals, are merely an extension. I mean, I could disseminate what you tell me in private. I could write it down and shout it from the rooftops. Upton Sinclair, when he wrote The Jungle, he saw everything, and then he ran back to his hotel and wrote it all down. So surely society would rather a situation where I accurately capture what it is that you told me, and I have to use cameras. They indemnify me because people call me a liar. They say that didn't happen. So I have to record the incidents because they would say that it did not happen the way that I reported it. And I also think that there are lines that we can't cross. We don't go into people's bedrooms. We try to stay away from the really personal, intimate, you know, sexual details about people. But this is a revolution that's aimed at the power structure, at this establishment, the powers that be, not against private citizens. And I think there is a duty, there is a responsibility that investigative reporters have not to put people on blast unless it really meets a compelling public interest.
So you mentioned you started this in college. What was tipping you off to, like, that there was something wrong with the media? I mean, what made you go, I got to go in there and say I'm Irish and I'm offended by Lucky Charms? Like, what really was happening that you were seeing that led to that?
Well, I was at Rutgers University in New Jersey, and it was the political correctness was run amok like most schools.
Don't tell me there's something bad happening with the grease trucks, please.
The grease trucks, you know about
I know the grease trucks. Please tell me that they're okay.
For those of you who don't know, there are these trucks at Rutgers, and it's like they're all in a parking lot, and
you get real fat real quick. Only a college
there
kid
was
could get
something.
away with
You
that.
know what? There was something wrong with the grease trucks.
God.
They had put duct tape. This is in 2005 over these sandwiches. Am I allowed to curse on that?
You can curse. You can curse.
There was one of them called the fat bitch and the fat dyke and other words that were offensive. And they had put duct tape over the names because these words were considered offensive. That's what compelled me to try to ban Lucky Charms.
Yeah.
So I said, this is ridiculous. I also had professors who were Stalinists. I had professors who were telling me how great communism was, and I was not political. But I read the New York Times every day, front to back, in college, in the dining hall. I was sort of an introverted guy, and I'd read the paper, and I said, this doesn't accurately capture the world. This doesn't tell people what's really going on. So I felt compelled to do something about it, and it wasn't comfortable. It's not comfortable to confront people with cameras and, you know, get into their faces, but I was willed to do it because I believed in the cause. And the kind of the Alinsky methodology, which is to make them accountable to their own principles. You know, you had these Marxist professors driving Bentleys and BMWs, and had a little muckraking newspaper, and it was like Lifestyles of the Rich and Marxist, where I'd you know, track these people down. I just feel that most people that do this, most insiders inside these companies coming to us, now have what I call a justice complex. They think that there are things wrong with the world, and they feel compelled to do something about it. It's hard to explain, but you know, I'm sure you know people who have this complex, and these people are willing to basically jump on a grenade, to wear a camera, to film their employer, some cases violating their own non-disclosure agreement, because they believe the public has a right to know what they're seeing.
Are you shocked at the amount of people at these big tech companies who now are willing to speak? Because, I mean, I know insiders that I get some information from. I mean, I'm talking about Google, Facebook, Twitter, like that. Really, these things have become so huge that now their own people inside them are going, whoa, what did we help create here? You know,
I'm not
We've got a Frankenstein monster.
I mean, have you been to Menlo Park, and you go to San Francisco, and I was there because I did this Facebook story, this insider inside Facebook, and I went to try to locate these engineers and ask them for comment, and there were just these buses, just hundreds of buses filled with millennials. And if you go to the campus, people are sort of driving around these bicycles. The best word I can describe it is they're minions. It's just sort of this little totalitarian little mini state within a state. And it's just a groupthink Orwellian place. And I guess the word that it was described to me by the inside is that they're all minions. They're very intelligent people, but they don't have a lot of common sense. And I went there. I was amazed by this Menlo Park campus, buses of young people being bussed in. And I think that it doesn't surprise me that people are willing to blow the whistle, because there's more to life than making, $250,000 a year and working for these companies. People want to do something. One of the things that I get told all the time, what can I do? And there aren't a lot of choices for people. You can watch the shows, you can buy the books, but some people want to actually participate in this country. And solutions are increasingly, outside the scope of government. The legislative process does not seem to solve things. So there needs to be a different counterweight. There needs to be a different solution. And I would say that 0.001% of people are like, put a camera on me. That's a lot of people, by the way.
Yeah, right. We're talking about a lot of people at the end of the day. So when did you realize that? Because you've mostly focused, or at least I think the work that has gotten you the most attention has been related to the tech companies, not necessarily going after politicians or academics per se, although you've done some of that. When did you realize that focusing on the tech companies was really the thing that was going to strike the chord with most people? Because that's what it seems to me.
Well, because I think the media has all the power. I think that I've known this ever since I started this endeavor, was that the media has so much more power than people realize. Everyone knows the media is powerful, but I think that people fear the humiliating power of the press. I think the press, including the big tech companies, have more power than government. They are more powerful than all three branches of government, the executive, judicial, legislative branch. So somehow we need to hold these people accountable. They're not held accountable by anybody. Who elects them? And I don't know what the solutions are. People say, well, should they be regulated? I think they should be transparent, or they will need to be regulated. But they have to at least not deceive the people. So because the media has all the power, I wrote this book called American Pravda, and I believe that people don't know that they're being lied to by CNN and the New York Times, and they don't know that they're being deboosted and shadow banned by Twitter and Facebook. And I think these companies need to tell you that they're doing it. It's not so bad if they take your account down and restore it, but the thing that's really scary about the deboosting and the shadow banning is that you don't know that it is happening to you. And
right, you can kind of see it, you can kind of feel it. There are times when everything I'm doing is on fire, and then sometimes where it's just like nothing happens, and those usually have a certain political bent to them, and then you end up really feeling like you're in a mental institution, because if you don't have evidence of anything, I don't want to be the guy that's running around screaming everything's a conspiracy and they're coming after me.
Well, even
and the rest of it, we're doing this on YouTube right now.
Even when you do have evidence, like we have videotape after tape of people inside Twitter, including the Twitter direct messaging guy, saying that they have certain keywords and they consider to be a Russian bot if you tweet about God, guns, and the American flag. Most of these engineers are not. Some of them are not American citizens. They don't share American, values. And this individual says, if you tweet about flag, he says, who talks like that? Who talks about God? You must be a Russian bot. I have the videotape, and they still say it's fake. So, I think that it's one of those things where people need to see this stuff, and I just want these companies to be honest about what they're doing. I just want them to be honest. That's
Do they have to be honest, though? I mean, we want them to be honest, right? So I'm with you. I want them to be honest. And the reason I apply as much pressure on them, on Twitter and YouTube particularly, is because I want them to be better, right? Like, I always say this. It's like, I got 1 million subscribers. I put out a television quality show on YouTube for free. And I don't even have an email address as someone at YouTube. I have no contact at someone at YouTube. Like, that's legitimately crazy. They're a huge company that offers a product. I'm a user of the product that helps make them money through advertising and all that stuff. I can't even get a human there. But I don't think I can force them to be better, right?
Well, it's the job of investigative reporting to hold people accountable, to test and affirm what is an outrage to people. And I think that you can't lie under oath. You can't. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg said in Congress last spring some things that may be contradicted by some of the documents we've unearthed. There are laws against perjury. And what people have to remember is I don't have a position on whether these companies should be regulated. I honestly don't know what should be done. I do know that people need to know what is happening inside the companies. And I think that because they're so powerful, people have no idea. When you digest content from CNN and the New York Times, all that stuff gets filtered through Facebook. In fact, when I did the Facebook story, I was shocked by some people in media telling me, well, I love the story, but I don't know if I can cover it. Why not? Because we derive most of our revenue from Facebook.
Yeah.
The same thing happened during the 2016 election when I did the Hillary Clinton tapes and the Bob Creamer resigned. I mean, people have to remember that these companies are publicly traded companies. They get their broadcast license from the FCC in some circumstances. There's sort of entanglements. There's a symbiotic relationship between the corporate press and the government. And for those reasons, again, to go back to the campaign to recruit insiders, it's going to require citizens, it's going to require outsiders to blow the whistle, because no one in the government is going to do it. Indeed, many of them are on the take.
Okay, so let's just do each platform
Sure.
one at a time. So you just mentioned Facebook, so let's go to Facebook. What do we need to know about what's going on with the Facebook algorithm and the way they're banning people and suspending people and the rest of it?
Well, I can tell you what our insider told us. I try to only speak about the things that I know 100%. And the insider was working in the content review tool at Facebook, and she was a contractor for the company, and she leaked us documents inside the company showing, I guess, what would be called as a deboost of a live stream video. And she said she specifically saw this on Steven Crowder's page. She saw it on a few other pages. She took a screenshot of a Mike Cernovich page, and on the page it says iAction Live Distribution. This was apparently some type of algorithm written to, from what we could see, to reduce content that was suicidal or violent, but none of these individuals were talking or doing anything that would rise to that level. Now, there's two different parts of Facebook people need to understand. There's a task system where it seems like Facebook after the election hired hundreds, if not thousands, of people to monitor, and they do a fairly good job. If your page gets taken down, it can be reinstated. You can file a complaint, and they have a pretty good process. But then there's another part of Facebook that this insider told us about, where this algorithm was occurring, and it was occurring automatically. And they were identifying certain keywords. So she leaks us this troll report. It's called a troll report. And after the election, Facebook decided to get more involved in things. I guess they didn't like the outcome of the election, and maybe that's what this is really about. I mean, independent people having an impact on society, they don't like that, and there needs more control. So they had this troll report where there were certain key words, words that were not racist or problematic really, but they were words that were appropriated by right-wing meme culture, words like lulz and normie, and even the MSM, mainstream media, was in this troll report, since typically right-wingers use MSM more than the left.
Right. And these are just words or phrases or acronyms that usually are just meant in meme, funny, shareable, silly ways. These are not
a threat to democracy.
Saying MSM, mainstream media, is not an implication of racism.
Well, they also brought up Lauren Chen. They brought her up. She was in there as an example of someone who needs to be dealt with vis-a-vis the product intervention at Facebook. And I don't know. I'm not aware of any activities or problems with her videos. I mean, she's just someone who's sharing her mind on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm not sure what order we're putting these up in, but I've got Lauren Chen coming in here in an hour, so we'll dive into this.
That's just a cosmic coincidence. So she leaks us these documents. We put the story out. Instantly, what happens is the press, The Verge was the name of the outlet, comes to Facebook's defense. It always happens, by the way. We did the story on Twitter, and instantly BuzzFeed comes out. Twitter says they don't do this.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not journalism.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, Twitter says. The job of investigative reporting is to question what they tell you. But it's always the case when we do these videos that people come out and they say, well, they say they don't do this. And they came to Facebook's defense. But the truth is, these documents were real. And the two engineers that we interviewed, a guy named Seiji Yamamoto and Danny Ben David, actually confronted these guys on the street in San Francisco with a film crew, because no one would give me any answers. But The documents are pretty self-explanatory, and it's definitely I don't know if Mark Zuckerberg knows that these things are happening, but if he does, he was lying under oath.
Right. So wouldn't the sensible thing to do if you were Mark Zuckerberg would be make sure that you don't really know what's going on at your company, so that when you get put in the position where you're under oath, you can basically say anything. And I think this would stand true for Jack at Twitter and a bunch of these guys. If the buck never stops with you, and I'm sure you saw Jack from Twitter on with Joe Rogan and Tim Pool, and it was like, he just struck me as, oh, I don't really know what's going on with my company, but that seems like it's by design. That's not an accident.
That's interesting. There's a book by Blake Harris out in the last couple weeks about Palmer Luckey and Facebook, and I encourage you to read it. It's unbelievable that this guy, Palmer Luckey, who founded Oculus, the virtual reality software, was dealt with by Mark Zuckerberg directly inside the company. He was told not to be a Trump supporter.
I think we're getting him on the show, actually.
So I don't know whether that's true or not. I did see Jack Dorsey. He's never addressed anything we've exposed. They don't want to deal with the actual evidence. There's videotapes of Abhinav Vadrevu saying one strategy is to shadow ban. I mean, they don't want to actually address the evidence. They want to say, well, they don't know what they're talking about. Well, you know, and by the way, there is a difference between, I think anytime you have human beings in a room making content decisions subjectively, you're going to have these problems. These are hard problems to solve, but it goes back to the original point of hiring hundreds, if not thousands of people to do the content review. I think at the end of the day, if these companies don't like an independent people influencing the minds of other people. That's what this is really about.
And that would actually be okay if they were transparent about it, sort of, because then it would allow competition to fill that void. But this sort of neither here nor there-ness of it seems to be the problem. So, okay, so deboosting seems to be the main problem with Facebook. And that's interesting that it was hitting Crowder videos and Lauren Chen and a couple other people. And this means you're streaming, right? So this means when he's streaming, that the number, it's just not going to feeds. Is that
right?
Really
it's when you do a live stream video, there are special tags, there are special qualities in that live stream, and they downrank the video. They take away some of the special qualities that make it automatically show up on other people's timelines. According to the insider that we spoke to, the other thing about these videos that are live streamed is that they're converted to text automatically, and machine learning goes through the video and identifies these keywords. So yes, the video would be downranked, it would have its special qualities taken away, and I think that Crowder settled out of court in 2016 with Facebook, that's what he told me, and I think that he's in the process of doing some more litigation related to some of the things they're doing to his videos.
Yeah, is there anything else we need to know on the Facebook front? You've said they've gotten a little bit better when it comes to, they would ban people and suspend people left and right all the time. I used to have my friend Faisal Al-Mutar, who's been on the show many times, who's an ex-Muslim from Iraq and really working to secularize the Arab world. I mean, doing incredible work. I mean, this is a good man. He would get banned all the time. Right. And I had a contact there, so I was able to help him get back on. That seems to be happening a little bit less now. So
I logged in there. The insiders showed me how it works. There's I guess what you call a task function, and you know, someone gets there are independent people in the company, low-level people who just make arbitrary decisions to remove people, and that's wrong, and they shouldn't do that. But there are adult supervision in the room. There are people. There's like a conversation thread under each task. They convert these things into what they call tasks, and there are adults that say, well, that's no good, and there are relationships with a lot of the publishers for entities such as your own, and there's a relationship between a sales rep at Facebook, and there seemed to be adult supervision, but the problem is with the algorithm side of things, as far as I can see.
So is part of it that the algorithm, in many cases, the algorithms were written by people, you know, 10 years ago or 15 years ago who probably aren't at the company anymore? Nobody really, like, who really understands what's going on with these algorithms? Do the engineers at these companies even have a sense of what's really going on, and how can they make sure that they're not manipulated by the low-level people and all that?
Well, one of the problems I have as a reporter doing this is trying to, I mean, I'm not a tech person, I don't claim to have any special expertise, is trying to, people's eyes glaze over when you start talking about machine learning and SSI, live stream distribution. So it's trying to get the people indignant about something that they have no idea what this means. But yes, I think Danny Ben David wrote the algorithm at Facebook in 2017, and it was apparently intended to address violence or suicidal content, and we believe that it was applied to politics, and it was used for ill. That seems to be what happened at Facebook.
So you're saying the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
That's right.
Is that what you're telling me? Anything else going on at Facebook that we need to know about? And do you sense that Zuckerberg, maybe because of being hauled in front of Congress, will do anything
I
else?
can tell you that everyone inside the company knows what we did. And there's, I don't know how many, 60,000 employees. They all know exactly what we did. And I think that when we personalize it by going to we went to the engineers' doors. We went to the train station where the guy gets on the train every morning, and I interviewed him, and he said, "I fear for my safety." He's like, "I'm scared." I'm like, "You're scared? I should be afraid for my safety."
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are the ones spying on us and taking our videos down, and not to that, but I'm going after this trillion-dollar company. But we personalized it, and I think that there's a lot. Since I released this tape a month ago, there have been many people inside the company that have approached me, and I'm trying to, it's always the question of, do you want to wear a camera or do you just want to feed me things anonymously? My medium is video. I think that there has to be video, because if we don't tape these things, no one will believe it. So then the person has to basically lose their job, and I'll hire them. And that's how our model tends to work these days.
How do you make sure that when someone reaches out to you that they're not just trolling you?
Like a triple agent?
Yeah. Well, basically that they would reach out to you knowing that you throw up one bad thing, and there's been little moments which we can get into.
Yes.
That's going to blow up all of the other good work that you've done. So there's high incentive for somebody to do that.
Well, it's a risk. I mean, listen, what we do is very high risk for many different reasons, which we can get into, I guess. But what we do is extremely risky. And in undercover work, you're going to get burned. You try to use common sense. There are things that we do. You go very carefully. You do your due diligence. Oftentimes, they send you something. There's something called tortious interference with violating a non-disclosure agreement. It's a lot of complex legal analysis, but essentially they have to tell us something first, and then we can tell them to film what they have told us. So we have to be very careful, and we have been burned, by the way, and you probably knows about some of those things. But for the most part, we're 95 to 98% successful. Not everything that people bring to us do we publish. Not every secret conversation that I've recorded do we publish. I think it's the choosing to publish something, the video that we've obtained, is really where the ethical calculation comes in.